Welcome to this year's first episode of Weather with Blake and Heather.
This is the show to learn about all things weather. I'm Blake Harms.
And I'm Heather Bricca.
On this week's episode, we're going to recap the biggest tropical storylines so far this season.
We'll also get to see a story of an American flag still standing after Hurricane Florence. It's all coming up next. Welcome back to this year's episode of Weather with Blake and Heather. Hurricane season this year has been quite active. Blake, where have the storms hit the hardest?
That's right, Heather. It has been an active hurricane season, not as much as last year. We had three big storms so far: Hurricane Lane, Tropical Storm Gordon, and the biggest one so far, Hurricane Florence. So as we start off here with Hurricane Lane, it progressed all the way across the Pacific Ocean. It really slowed down when it hit Hawaii. That allowed for some major flooding here on those islands before finally moving away from the islands and dissipating. The next one we had was Tropical Storm Gordon, which stayed in a pretty steady track up through Miami before finally making landfall in Mississippi. Didn't do a ton of damage, brought a lot of rain, but was your rather run-of-the-mill tropical storm. The big story so far this year has been Hurricane Florence, which started all the way over here in Africa and progressed its way to the Carolinas, and it slowed down a lot here as it hit the Carolinas, which allowed for some major rainfall totals. Some places saw over 3 feet of rain before this thing finally pushed its way up along the East Coast and fizzled out. How does this compare to past seasons? Well, 2016 in the Atlantic was relatively quiet. Here we had a lot of these smaller storms, some bigger ones that stayed out over the Atlantic. The biggest one to impact the United States was Matthew, and that pushed up the Florida coast before causing some flooding issues in South Carolina especially. The bigger story was last year, where we had several major hurricanes: Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Harvey, which produced in some places close to 5 feet of rain, as well as some of these smaller ones like Tropical Storm Cindy and Tropical Storm Emily. But the notice here, as it's especially Harvey, where it looped around, that's what allowed for areas of Texas to get so much rain. Although the biggest story of the year, at least over and to our neighbors in the west, has been Typhoon Mangkhut, which really produced a lot of damage in the Philippines and China. Heather has more on that.
Wow, thanks, Blake. As you saw there, the Philippines in the southeast China was struck with Typhoon Mangkhut, and just a few weeks ago. The typhoon's strength caused extensive damage to the country and left thousands without food and home. It caused a massive landslide in northern Philippines, which then destroyed homes and left many people trapped under the rubble. The most crazy part about the Typhoon Mangkhut was the fact that many people were in their homes at the time of the landslide, and it left thousands of people trapped under the rubble.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about countries like that is that they don't have the resources that we necessarily do. So when something big like that hits, it's a lot harder for them to get the necessary resources to help people out there.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and unfortunate for them, for sure. So let's just take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll see exactly what happened to the flag that's still standing on the coast of Florida.
Stick with us. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. Here's a pretty cool story. There's an American flag that survived Hurricane Florence, and it's up for auction. Let's take a look.
The flag was flying at the Frying Pan Tower, an old U.S. Coast Guard lighthouse off the coast of North Carolina, as Florence roared ashore. A live stream allowed people all over the world could see the storm as it moved in and ripped the flag to shreds. The owner of the lighthouse said he decided to auction the weather-beaten flag after he saw how much attention it received online. The auction started Thursday and is scheduled to end Sunday night. All the money raised will go to the American Red Cross, a march for Hurricane Florence relief efforts. Wow, so that story is pretty crazy to see that something like a flag will still be standing after substantial amounts of rain and heavy damaging winds that destroyed many other things in Florida itself.
Yeah, and it seems to be like a trend in America whenever you have such a damaging event or a disaster, the American flag is the one thing that always seems to be standing. It always seems to withstand the winds, withstand the damage, and it shows our patriotism and our resilience and our ability to fight back.
Yes, for sure, especially after such a tragic event as such a crazy hurricane coming through.
And I cannot believe it's going for that much money either.
I know, like around $3 million.
Unreal.
That's so crazy to me.
People will pay for patriotism, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of which, with social media and news coverage helping to amplify hurricane coverage, as we saw with this flag, something that goes viral, we thought we'd take a look at how severe last season truly was and how this season has been shaping up. So 2017 was an absolutely devastating year. We had Tropical Storm Emily, Hurricane Harvey and Irma were the big hitters. We also had Maria in Puerto Rico. Unbelievable amount of damage, both in cost and loss of life, and it's really something we hadn't seen in years.
I know, yeah, it definitely fired up in 2017 for sure. They amplified in a way that hurricanes haven't really done in previous years, and I don't think a lot of these places were expecting these kinds of damages, especially with Hurricane Emily being around $10 million of damage.
Right, and with these hurricanes going in alphabetical order, we went from Harvey to Irma, H to I, and they were both absolutely phenomenal hurricanes.
Yeah.
You had Harvey, which brought over 5 feet of rain in some places, and Irma, which caused devastation along the Florida coast. To have 2 back-to-back hurricanes like that is very impressive.
Yes, but also very devastating at the same time. It's hard to rebuild when there's 2 back-to-back
And
like
the Cajun Navy that went out and rescued some of those folks in Houston certainly helped to keep this death toll down. Still 68 deaths directly related to Harvey, 52 with Florida, with Irma. They say that 6.5 million people were evacuated for Irma in the state of Florida alone, which is the largest evacuation they've ever had.
Yeah, that's crazy because I know how hard it is to evacuate so many people in such a small area like Florida.
And it shows that people are taking the advice seriously. However, Maria, folks weren't so lucky. Over 3,000 deaths estimated there. You have nowhere to go if you're on an island like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's really hard to
Yes.
leave such a place like an island.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. When we come back, we will discuss various media sources that people tune in during tropical events and its effects on the public perception. Stay tuned.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
Welcome back. With a seemingly endless amount of radio stations, television stations, and social media accounts providing information during tropical storms and hurricanes, it can be easy to become overwhelmed and it can be difficult to choose what to watch or who to listen to. And I think the biggest debate, especially when you have tropical storms and hurricanes, is do you tune into a channel like the Weather Channel, a nationwide programming network, or do you watch your local news?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to know the difference between watching local news and what you're getting with local news versus the Weather Channel, because the broadcast meteorologists put a lot of dignity into their forecasts and trying to keep the people in their viewing area safe. And I think those are the people that people should be listening to, especially during times of hurricanes and disasters.
And they'll stay in there till the very end, till they absolutely need to evacuate. With Hurricane Florence, there was a local affiliate where they didn't leave till their building started flooding to the point where their technology was breaking down.
Yes.
So the local news channels seem to have obviously more knowledge of the region, whereas the Weather Channel not to degrade them, but it seems like they go into areas that are seeing these big weather events for the ratings.
Yes.
And to get in there and to try to show the craziness to the rest of the viewers at home that aren't particularly in that danger zone.
Yeah, I think for the Weather Channel, they are focusing on the crazy weather events that will get them the most views.
Right, and we saw something with a lot of views, Mike Seidel's clip where he was bent over in the wind when you saw a few teenagers walk behind him as if nothing was happening.
I know, it's so crazy to me that he got away with doing that, but then everybody on social media was definitely pointing that out.
Right, and there's various excuses. He was standing on grass, you know, he was around a building corner, whatnot. But it shows that they're certainly willing to dramatize the event to get those ratings.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily what you're looking for if you're someone sitting at home going through a hurricane wanting to know, what information do I need to know to make it through this safely?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the most important thing that you need to get from local news is what's happening and what's going to affect me.
Right, right. And social media accounts certainly play a role in this too, especially the amateur meteorologists, if you could call it that, and who like to post, you know, weather models that are way far out.
Yeah.
The chasers who go out and chase the eye of the storm, and they can get hyped up a lot easier than even the Weather Channel can.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know the difference between following social media forecasts versus actual TV meteorologists and what they know and knowledge in the field versus somebody who just wants to chase the storm to get pictures of
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Well, and when people do live streams on Twitter and whatnot, and they're just screaming the whole time, that panics people that are sticking it through.
Yeah.
And it over-exaggerates this for everyone else, and it's a bad situation all around.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the show. That just about wraps up today's episode. Hopefully you've taken something away about tropical weather.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Weather with Blake and Heather.